delighted that we're joined by Chaz Walia, who's Deputy Director in charge of the new Export Support Service at the DIT, who's going to be talking about that over the next 45 to 50 minutes or so. We'll come to you on that. So welcome to this webinar. I'm going to launch straight in with David Bharier, my colleague, who's going to share with you the output of the International Trade Survey. Before he starts, though, can I just prompt you that there is a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen where you can pose questions. You may also want to share your own experience in there, and we'll try and come to the experience of people in the room in terms of what you've gone through over the last 11 months in adapting to both a post-Brexit environment, but also the impact of COVID, which is ongoing. So, David, over to you. Take the floor, please.
Thank you, Liam, and hello, everyone. Pleasure to be here this afternoon. So, as Liam mentioned, I'll be talking through some of the findings from our International Trade Survey that we've recently completed. And for context, just so everyone's aware, the British Chambers of Commerce run a large-scale research programme. Each year, we survey businesses of all sectors, of all sizes within the membership on issues relating to trade, Brexit, skills, net zero, COVID. What we're trying to do with all of this is to support our network in providing the right intelligence down to businesses. But fundamentally, we're trying to create the best possible evidence base on which government policy can be built. So, as hopefully you all should know by now, we are a confederated network of 53 local chambers of commerce, but we're also a network of 75 chambers globally. This is bilateral British chambers. So that puts us in a really strong position to be capturing UK exporters within our membership. So this is what makes the results today so interesting. We are speaking uniquely to a group of businesses that trade internationally, both with the UK, with the EU and globally, and they're in a very unique position to share their experiences with us. I should add, many of you in the audience may have already completed this survey, so I'd just like to extend a thanks to you for your participation, because ultimately we're trying to get your view up to a government and national level. We produce a lot of press output with all of our research as well, so you can probably expect to see these results that I'll be talking through now. You can expect to see them in the press in the next few weeks. So for the time being, if you bear in mind that this is a confidential and exclusive briefing on the data, that would be brilliant. So in terms of the survey itself, we go out to Chamber of Commerce members, as I say, and in this particular survey, we received over 1,000 participants. We're lucky in the sense that we get a very broad spread of businesses respond to our surveys. And in very broad terms, they're reflective of the wider business community. So they're 93% SME businesses, i.e. businesses with fewer than 250 employees. And the sectors that make up the sample, it's about 41% manufacturing, 28% business to consumer service sector. So these are retailers, hospitality firms, etc. And about 31% business to business. So lawyers, accountants, anyone involved in a sort of more business to business space. We have a high proportion of exporters in the sample, 61% say that they export in one way or another. And the fieldwork took place across October. So that's just a bit of background on the survey. So what are the results telling us from this particular survey? Well, fundamentally, we tried to gain insight, both quantitative and qualitative insight, on what the major challenges were for UK firms at present, as well as their attitudes towards trade policy more generally and other areas of interest, so net zero, inflationary pressures, skill shortages, etc. In very broad terms, there's a lot of data to unpack, so we won't get through everything today. I'll talk through some of the headlines. In very broad terms, though, what we've seen in this particular survey, it actually backs up what we've seen in a lot of our research recently, is that inflationary pressures are hitting virtually every firm that we speak to in one way or another. We'll get onto that in a second. We're also seeing that skills shortages are both wide and deep. Again, something that's a reoccurring theme, and we can touch on what that means shortly. More positively, we're seeing that most firms intend to grow, both domestically and internationally, but there seems to be a lag on those firms expecting their own investment to increase. So one thing that we've seen since the start of the crisis is a very high proportion of businesses downgrade their investment plans. For obvious reasons, revenue's gone down, cash flow's gone down. We're yet to see a return to pre-pandemic levels of businesses increasing their investment, and that's a concern for long-term recovery. We're also seeing some serious challenges with the trade and cooperation agreement persist. We ran a similar survey back in January at the start of the process. And actually what we're seeing now in some cases is a deterioration of some of the issues that businesses were facing in January. We also have probably a wider issue about the perception that businesses have that their views are not really considered in the trade policy making process. And we'll touch on that shortly. But those are some of the very key headlines that have emerged out of the survey. If we touch on some of the inflationary pressures data that we capture, I appreciate a lot of this will be quite crowded, so don't worry about examining it in too much detail. But what we asked businesses, we wanted to understand where are the problems coming from, where are the inflationary pressures coming from, because we know from our research since the start of the year, from other research that we've done, that inflationary pressures are hitting record highs. So we wanted to understand what is driving this. So we asked businesses whether they'd experienced either increased costs or shortages for any of the following items. What comes out on top are pretty obvious things really. Vehicle fuel comes out on top. But then shipping containers is also cited as a second top answer. Utility costs going up, so gas and electricity is the third top answer. And steel products comes fourth. Now, for manufacturers, if you can spot it in the green bars here, manufacturers are more likely to say that they've faced a price increase for one or more of these items. In fact, 98% of manufacturers ticked one or more of these items, which is a pretty startling figure. Whereas for business-to-business service sector firms, as I say, lawyers, accountants, etc., they're a bit less likely to be reporting shortages or price increases. So that goes down to about 75%. Now that's obviously as you'd expect, because these sort of firms are less exposed to raw materials or shipping containers, etc. But I think this talks to the fact that manufacturers are mainly feeling the crunch on the price rises and commodity shortages. We also asked about skills shortages as well, and this is a theme that's really emerged. And 50% of firms overall in the sample said that they had experienced employee or skills shortages. That goes up to 75% for businesses with more than 50 employees. So that's really hitting larger firms here, obviously those firms that are more likely to be going out to recruit. And when we ask what is driving this, what are the roles that are most difficult to recruit for, given that we're a diverse base of businesses, you expect to see quite a lot of different roles being cited. But the top roles that came out of this question were HGV drivers. And again, that goes back to the challenges that we've seen in the last few months around driver shortages. Engineers are also cited quite a lot by businesses, warehouse staff, and then on the professional service sector side, accountants, IT roles. But then on for hospitality, chefs and lower skilled roles kept coming up consistently. So what you see is a picture where there isn't a single type of role that's being difficult to recruit for. It's across the board, and it obviously depends on the type of sector that we're speaking to. So that's a bit on inflation and shortages. I mentioned the more positive outlook on growth. And when we ask businesses if they have plans to be active in the UK market, the EU market, and global non-EU markets, actually the picture's relatively positive. So what we find is that 2/3 of respondents overall intend to increase their activity in the UK market, and about 1/3 overall plan to increase activity in overseas markets. Now, bearing in mind that a fair segment of the participants don't export at all, as you can see from these dark red bars, 35% have no plans to be active in either the EU market, 41% have no plans to be active in global non-EU markets. So bearing in mind that this takes into account non-exporters, I would say that the figures are generally quite optimistic here. However, it is worth noting that 6% of businesses say that they do plan to decrease their activity in the EU market if they are already present, whereas only 3% of businesses plan to decrease their activity in global non-EU markets. So the numbers are very small, but I think it is worth pointing out that there are proportionately slightly more firms looking to decrease activity in the EU market. And some of the issues that we've identified with the TCA may go some way to explaining this. So we wanted to understand what would motivate businesses to export more or export at all if they weren't exporting. And we gave them a list of types of support that might help them, encourage them to export. The top answer for the type of support that would do most to encourage businesses to trade internationally was finding a business partner or distributor overseas. That's what 23% of businesses said that would do most to encourage them to export. So very much that sort of handheld, face-to-face connectivity sort of role that they felt they needed. After that, market research came out second. Trade shows and documentation support came out third. Interestingly, though, for this, when looking at what support would encourage businesses to export, manufacturers are actually far more likely to say that they would be encouraged to export by any of these options. And by contrast, non-exporters, to a very large degree, actually say nothing would encourage them to export at present. So I think this is quite interesting when we are trying to identify how to support businesses exporting, to understand where businesses are on that journey. And for non-exporters, for 3/4 of non-exporters, they're actually saying at this present stage, nothing really would encourage them to increase their international presence. So finally, looking at some of the issues I mentioned around the trade and cooperation agreement. So this obviously came into force on the 1st of January, and we asked businesses at the time, in January, the ease or difficulty with which they were adapting to the rules, the changing rules. And back in January, for UK exporters, 49% said that they were facing difficulties buying or selling goods, which was quite a significant figure at the time. The challenge now is that that figure's actually gone up. So now we have 60% of exporters reporting difficulties adapting to the rules for goods, which is very worrying stuff, I would regard. And it is primarily on the goods side. So when we look at data, for example, actually about 1 in 10 businesses, 1 in 10 exporters, I should say that they're facing difficulties transferring data. So that there is a massive shift in attitudes for the rules towards data and the rules towards trading goods. And I think that the fact that the UK and the EU have a data adequacy agreement in place probably explains why most firms are not having problems transferring data, but most exporters are having problems buying or selling goods. So again, what we wanted to understand here was, what is the specific problem at play? So we asked businesses who said that they faced a problem, what was the specific problem you are facing? And it'd be good maybe later on in the conversation to see if the audience here have similar experiences. But the things that we identified out of 400 case studies, there's a range of issues. Briefly, to mention the top issues that kept getting cited, VAT, so the requirement to pay VAT when goods enter a country, customs delays, a lot of businesses talking about unexplained delays to shipping goods, goods being held up in customs authorities, goods being returned. So there's a lot of issues there that were flagged. Rules of origin came up. So some businesses were talking about confusion about how they were to claim preferential rates of duty on complex supply chains or goods deriving from complex supply chains. Other businesses were talking about their lack of access now to skilled labour, so people moving back to the European Union, although obviously COVID is bound up by a lot of this as well. And then the Northern Ireland Protocol came out as an issue, obviously primarily for Northern Irish businesses, but a lot of GB businesses as well, talking about the expansion in bureaucracy and the lack of equivalence on things like financial services, medical devices, certification marking. In some cases, businesses feel that this has caused a loss of competitiveness and has increased their costs. And there's a couple of quotes, hopefully you can see it on the side, 3 quotes on the side of the slide there, just a bit of a random sample really, but we had 400 comments of this sort of nature. I mentioned the issue of goods being stuck in customs. That's something that was raised by this small manufacturer in East Lancashire. So there's a whole range of issues that have emerged over the last few months. And I would say that if you look at the data that we carry outside of this survey around export data, that we, whether businesses are increasing their export activity, it hasn't recovered in anywhere near the same level as domestic trade. So I think these issues are having a material impact on traders' ability to buy and sell goods and to sell services on the continent. I mentioned a tricky problem about lack of engagement or perceived lack of perception that views are not being taken into account. And again, we wanted to understand whether businesses felt that their views were considered across 3 areas of trade policy. Firstly, deciding the priority markets for future trade deals, deciding the terms of negotiation priorities, and assessing the practical impacts of trade deals once implemented. And you can see by those red bars that most firms don't feel that, well, they either feel that their views are not really considered or not considered at all. Only about 1 or 2% of firms that we spoke to said that their views are they feel that their views are very much considered. Now, the results are not different. They're no different for UK exporters. Obviously, UK exporters are the most exposed to changes in trade arrangements. So I think there is a worrying element here that many businesses don't feel that their views are being considered. Now, in 2018, the BCC did in fact put out a paper alongside the London School of Economics, setting out what a trade negotiation structure could look like and the mechanisms that could be used, like a room next door, ongoing consultations with certain sectors, etc. So that's been laid out already for government. So I'll just finish on the summary here, which is that I think my takeaway from all of this data and all of the other data that we've collected is that as the economy's gradually reopened throughout 2021, most businesses are looking to grow or intend to grow both domestically and internationally. However, the surge in demand, this is where COVID comes into play, the surge in demand for certain items such as shipping containers, and there's quite a lot of documentation around this now, as well as the surge in demand for job roles, coupled with a constraint on the supply, has basically led to unprecedented inflationary pressures and skill shortages, and we're seeing that borne out in our own data. What this has done is significantly impact business cash flow positions and investment plans, and it could threaten long-term recovery. And then when you add on top of that new requirements flowing from the TCA, there's a compounding of the issues, and additional costs and administrative burdens have been placed on businesses looking to trade with the European Union. More positively, though, I say there is a lot of growth. There's a lot of intention for growth, and we should capitalise on that. And certainly, our other data is showing that as the domestic market has reopened, domestic sales have certainly gone up. So that's really positive. As well, and most firms are receptive to support. They want to grow and they want to take the support that's available to them. But there is this other issue about businesses not feeling that they're part of the process. So I think there's a few things to think about, and obviously welcome audience participation on that. But with that, I'll hand back to Liam. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much for that, David. That is very insightful, and we can see some of the challenges that businesses are saying that they've been facing over the last year. Some of that Brexit related, some of that COVID related, and some of it probably a combination of both. But interesting that businesses are not feeling that they're being heard, that government's not engaging enough, and they don't feel like they're being listened to, and a lot of inflationary pressures. So I want to turn now to Martin, who has been trading with lots of countries, and perhaps Martin, you can share with us what you've been doing as a business, and maybe just a little bit as well as to whether some of what David's research results are saying resonates with you and your business, which is a very specialist area and fairly niche medical area that you work in.
Yeah, absolutely. So just for the audience, so Rayner, we are a sole UK manufacturer of intraocular lenses. So that's the implant for cataract patients. So it's very specialized and highly kind of geared towards research and development. And kind of after listening to David, you know, it does kind of resonate a lot. I would say that the only challenges that you listed that probably isn't applicable to us is the Northern Ireland Protocol. But we have challenges about, you know, VAT, customs, and kind of shortages in skills and also products. I mean, Brexit has been obviously a long topic, and we've been preparing for it. One of the things that we've been concentrating on in 2020 was applying for our AEO status. So the authorized economic operator status that would allow us to have kind of almost jump the queue in terms of customs clearance, and then kind of better systems and procedures that way. Through that, I think topic, we really learned a lot that basically our current structure wasn't geared up for trading with the EU into the future, and certainly not the post-Brexit scenario. So we really have, through actually help with our local chambers of commerce, kind of set up our policy and processes in place, which helped us to put an application with the revenue. And successfully, which is a great story, that early 2021, about a month post-Brexit, we managed to get the status, and that was a really great achievement, especially when we are trying to apply for the status throughout a lockdown period. Just to give you an example, so normally they would send an audit team on site to kind of test our procedures and the security of our warehouses, things like that. But obviously that couldn't happen during lockdown. So I was actually walking around with my iPhone on FaceTime trying to show the auditors kind of our site, and obviously how, you know, hilarious it was when my signal dropped and I keep having to kind of call them back to kind of go back to the tour of the offices and the warehouse and things like that. But I think through the process, what we learned is that, you know, by having a system and processes, whether it was Brexit or not, it was something that's beneficial for us all, to allow a consistent way of us working with our customers. So one of the things that has really jumped up is that our customers are looking for us for leadership in terms of how to get the customs, rather than us just selling it and then it's their problem to clear it through their customs. They're looking to us for our expertise to understand what are the problems, what's causing the delays, and how can we circumvent and navigate the world of exports. Having the previous knowledge of exporting to non-EU countries set a little bit of a foundation. But then, as I think you said, David, in your presentation, and I think one of the comments from one of the manufacturers was that the EU customers was, I think, a little bit underbriefed. I think everyone seems like the Brexit was a UK problem, which it is, but it just meant that the customers themselves needed to understand what admin and responsibility they are now taking by simply UK being outside of the EU bloc. With the trade agreement, luckily medical devices tend to be a zero-rated product because obviously of its nature in medical industry, so they don't tend to be a barrier for trade duties, but it is the bureaucracy, the additional forms and the additional admins that we've had to help our EU customers. And actually finding, actually another point that resonated was finding a good distributor is actually more important than the size of the market. We found that our relationship and our actually business growth in countries where we have a better structured distributor has worked much better than just a pure size of market that we have gone into. So those kind of things that, a real big partnership with the EU is very important.
Martin, can I ask you talk about, this specialist medical devices, and very often when it comes to the regulatory and standards processes, that you can face multiple jurisdictional challenges. Not everyone has the same regulations, I guess, when it comes to those kinds of devices. Has that been more of a challenge than you would have expected it to be compared to the rest of the world in terms of getting your goods into your product into EU? Yeah,
absolutely. And I think what some countries are trying to do, so we export into Russia as well. And just as an anecdotal kind of story here is that they're trying to align the customs product classifications, which is the commodity codes, with their regulatory product classifications, which is actually a very difficult thing to do because the customs codes are set for a completely different purpose, but they saw fit that to align those processes to make themselves easier. Going back to the country of origin and commodity and kind of things like that, we are experiencing regulatory problems because they're using the customs clearance documentations for the regulation approval process, which is almost impossible thing to do because the commodity code and things like that is set by the world. And obviously Russia have their own kind of local compliances and oddities. So I think there's some ideas that might have borne out of good intentions that have led to kind of unforeseen consequences in the future for us, certainly.
And of course, the central to every export and import is the harmonized system, the commodity code. And we do get variations around the world. In the US, there are some variables in terms of how they classify goods. And so that's where I think businesses ought to make sure they have a good customs broker that understands the complexities of the harmonized system. It's harmonized, but it's different in some countries and others. And of course, that Russian example is a very good one where they're trying to align with the regulatory framework as well and the challenges that can bring. Now, what about the people? Because the people in your organization, I'm guessing that the AU applications also involved a bit of upskilling. Tell us about that. How do you get your people upskilled and ready for the changes that have already happened? And I guess, the new import regulations for the EU imports that come in January.
Yeah, absolutely. So with the AEO status applications, we will also have to demonstrate that our staff are trained. It's no use of having a process, but then the people that operating process have no idea about it. So obviously we've engaged with the local chambers of commerce and also other sources of training applied and then we've kind of put them to courses. And I think last year there was a centralized government grant that helped us to fund some of these courses. And yeah, which is now kind of come into fruition now post-Brexit, and also amid COVID as well, because some of our customers with good intentions kind of challenges us in terms of our commodity codes and our way of doing things. And now we're able to, because our staff are trained, to come back as a more of a supportive environment to go, I'm afraid that this is, we can't change the commodity code just because it's easier for you. There's a reason, and there's a why of why we classify that. And we were able to go back as a knowledgeable party to it, to explain why we have to stand firm for certain things or classifications or CPC coding and things like that. So there's loads of kind of I guess knowledge gaps that we are having to almost filter down to our customer, to our supply chain, and even upwards as well to our raw material supply as well, to also understand, you're sending this material to us in this way, but I think that this is the best way because of, X, Y, and Z to the regulations that we are trying to apply. So having well-trained staff, just not just in finance, in our logistics, in our supply chain, in our procurement, everyone can talk knowledgeably. Yeah. And are able to kind of have those conversations with our suppliers and customers are kind of where we are at the moment, and it's best positive at the moment.
And just finally, before we turn to Chaz, the cost of doing all that. I mean, obviously you're supported by government grant. You mentioned there in terms of the training, but what's the overall impact in terms of your cost base of these changes in the last 12 months? Can you see something?
Certainly. Yeah, absolutely. Our cost base certainly has gone up because of the kind of bureaucratic admin side of things that have increased our duties. And one of those things that we've learned as well is not to lean on our our custom brokers too much in terms of their expertise, because sometimes having the internal expertise is actually more important than outsourcing everything. So increasing cost of our couriers, increasing in our staff costs, because we've had to have recruitments for roles that are specifically targeted for our AEO status applications, and also touching on kind of the cost inflationary on side of thing that David's touched on the supply chain. The supply and demand are heavily imbalanced, so everything at the moment is kind of almost a perfect storm where everything is overlapping on each other. So you're not looking at a 2 to 3% normal inflationary, you're looking to 8, 9, 10%, which is not unheard of these days.
And that's going to be challenging for a lot of businesses, isn't it? In terms of if everyone's delivering 8, 9, 10%, price increase, and then add to that the labour costs and so on, that's going to have a fairly big impact in terms of our inflation rates over time. Martin, thank you very much. I think that's really insightful about the way that you've changed and adapted. Can I just mention at this point, I know that somebody did ask on the chat, Gayarthe asked about, will we be sharing a recording of the webinar? We will be in about a week's time. We'll share that and we'll send it out, the link out to you as soon as we're able to do that. We'll let you have that recording so you can share it with other people. So we've heard some of the challenges that businesses face. We've heard from Martin on just the adaptation that's happened there. Chaz, you have recently taken on the role of heading up the government's investment in the Export Support Service. So maybe turning to you, can we talk now a little bit? I think you may have a couple of slides just to explain the service itself, and then we'll go on and chat a bit about how that can support businesses going forward. And then I'm going to come to some of the Q&A, the questions that we've got in the Q&A. Please contribute to that if you have a question, and we'll come to those. We've already got some piling up, and we'll try and deal with those before we close out at 3 rather. Thank you. Chaz.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Liam, and thank you for this invitation. Today is indeed my first day as Deputy Director for the Export Support Service, so it's an absolute honour to be here this afternoon virtually. Heidi, if you would like to put up the slide deck, if that's okay. So that is not me. I'll start off by saying we have a new campaign Following the launch of the export strategy, this is our new slide deck type background, so which is quite befitting in a way, but nevertheless, this gentleman is not me.
I think you must have influenced the choice of image, Chan.
To be fair, I was very surprised when I first saw it, so it's all good. So, look, we know following EU exit, and I know from talking to businesses when I was working at Department of Exiting European Union, how businesses who have not been used to exporting to Europe as an independent nation will not be used to the rules and regulations and what do you need to do, etc. So I think there was a bit of a gap in terms of knowledge and process, etc. And I think there was, let's be honest, if you go into gov.uk, there's a lot of information, and unless you're on gov.uk every day, navigating it can sometimes be a bit complex, particularly if you're looking for specific answers. The Prime Minister was really keen on trying to support businesses further. So in April of this year, he commissioned us to launch the Export Support Service. And this was launched on the 1st of October. So we are very, very new, literally a very new service. And what the Export Support Service does, in a nutshell, has, first of all, 2 channels of entry. One, it has a helpline, and 2, it has a digital inquiry service in terms of a customer-facing approach to begin with. That's not withstanding all the rest of the services that are offered by DIT, but this is the digital and the helpline, particularly for export supports. So what can businesses get? First of all, answers to practical questions. I know certain people don't even know what commodity code is or won't know how to export, and if they have been exporting. So that we are getting a lot of, for example, at the moment, a lot of micro companies who are looking or on the start of their journey to become exporters. But equally, we're getting a lot of medium-sized and large companies who have specific policy questions. So this service, it focuses on questions that people have on specifically to, at the moment, Europe. So we are focusing on Europe in terms of our market at the moment. However, from next year, we will be rolling out to rest of the world markets, particularly as free trade agreements come online, and my team will be working on how we roll that out globally. I must stress here, we are not looking to duplicate all the other helpline and services across government. And that's really key, because there's a lot of, businesses have established relationships with other departments, and they have established relationships and know where to get, if it's specifically an issue, let's say on exporting, for example, fish, for example, they know to contact DEFRA. If it's to do with customs, they'll contact HMRC. But yet some people don't actually know who to contact, given the fact there are so many government departments, etc., and who do you need to contact and when. So what we've done is we've created a one-stop shop in terms of the entry point. This does not duplicate, and it doesn't replicate what's already out there. But if a business is having challenges navigating, for example, gov.uk, or have a specific policy question, then they can contact the Export Support Service. Heidi, if you move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. So first of all, one can ask a question online, because not everybody has time to pick up the phone. Although if you do pick up the phone, we will answer the phone very, very quickly. So it's literally within 30 seconds at the moment. So you can complete a short questionnaire online and submit your specific policy question. And our team will respond within 3 working days if it's a simple query. Normally, actually, to be fair, the responses at the moment, as it currently stands on 6th of December, are normally, if it's straightforward, within literally 25 to 30 minutes. So it's not a very long wait. The key thing is that we don't want to keep people waiting. If it's, however, complex, it can take up to 10 working days. And that's if it has to be referred to another government department, or if it has to go to, for example, a question relating to post. So a lot of our queries are responded within. Most of them are within 3 working days. Some of them go into 10. And very, very exceptionally, if it's very, very complex, it may go slightly over that 10 working days. But that is not something that we are trying to, there's only been a few cases that are really complex that have had to fall outside of that. But routine queries fall within that. And then what we're trying to do is gather that intelligence. is try to understand what type of questions challenges people are facing, so that we can ensure that we're offering the right level of support to people. And some of those complex queries also go to the new Market Access Centre, which is based in Europe. So they liaise with, for example, member states. So if it's a specific question, let's say to do with France or to do with Germany, our colleagues in Europe can help support answer those. So one of the key things that I'm really keen on, particularly with our service, is that we offer a good customer experience. I know a lot of people, when they think about government helplines or they think about online digital inquiry services, what type of support we're going to receive. But that's one of the reasons why we're really focusing on the customer experience and how can we really truly help people quickly navigate the questions. The thing I will say is, and this is really important, we don't offer advice. And that's very key, because as government, we can only provide what the guidance is out there, but we will try to do that in the most simplest way. So a lot of people don't even know where to go. So we will provide, where to navigate to where, or provide you, if you need to speak to someone more specific or someone who can potentially help you with a bit more of your queries, then we'll look to refer you, etc. So that's something that I need to just make clear. If you want to just quickly go into the next slide, Heidi. So if at the moment, businesses are looking to, for example, phone in, they can do that. And there's a free telephone, an 0300 number there. And we're open Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And our call handlers will take some basic information and then provide you with links and the actual copy and paste the actual details so you know where to go. If it is more complex, it will come through our digital inquiry service, and then we'll basically come back to you digitally. And then another key part, which is an exciting part of the export support service, Heidi, if you want to just go into the next slide, is the new government cross-policy hub. And this is really important. What we're trying to do is, from the complex queries we get, from engaging with business and hearing from across government, we've set up a policy hub which looks to navigate those complex queries, but to also, through task and finish groups, to see how can we as government ensure that where businesses are facing challenges, we resolve them, or see whether it's actually something that we need to amend a policy where we can. If not, how can we make businesses digest that as simply as possible, and so that they can export, and we're not, they are aware of what they can and cannot do. So that's something that's really, really important. And this is something that has just recently been set up. So we're very, very new. And we are currently, we've only been set up for literally being operational since 1st of October. We're very keen to engage with business. We're very keen for businesses to, submit a query. If you are, hopefully, you are able to export. If you're not able to export, or you have an issue or a question, we will, across government, be able to put forward your query or liaise with the people that we need to, in order to be able to help support and resolve your query to the greatest extent possible. And as you can see, our new slogan is "Made in the UK and sold to the world," and that's part of the new 12-point export strategy, which is really exciting, and I strongly encourage people to go into gov.uk to read it. I'll stop there, Liam. I'm very happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. I think we can take the slides down, Heidi. That's good. Thank you very much, Chaz, for that. I'm going to come round to some questions right now, because I think they get to the heart of some of the issues certainly we hear from businesses when they're talking to us about the access to information from government. I think you've made very clearly the point that what you are offering as guidance and navigation rather than advice, which I have to tell you, Chaz, is the big thing that people say about government, is they're looking for advice, not guidance. And very often it's difficult to find the guidance, but you're going to help to navigate that, which is a good thing. Don Neville says that Martin highlighted the need to have well-trained and experienced personnel within an organisation. Don is asking, how much hands-on experience will the personnel in the ESS have to draw upon to assist companies with their specific inquiries? I think what he's talking to here is this idea, yeah, there is a call centre, but what's the experience of the people in the call centre? Are they simply good at working their way through Google and finding the right information, or actually have they got something that's underpinning the knowledge in this space of exporting, Chaz?
So the export support service is underpinned by policy experts, but also we, for example, are bringing in-house the international trade advisors. So there is the first stage of advice, which is navigating and providing understanding guidance. However, we also have access to, for example, from the Export Academy to the international trade advisors, which is something for a bit more bespoke and one-to-one support as well. So what I would say is we're constantly focusing on our capacity and the development of our staff, and we are looking to make sure people can provide advice in the way that they can, the best way to do that. And obviously, we will be focusing and investing in that over the coming months as well. So it will be something that is definitely, that will be not just a one-off, but continuous. So that's something very important to us.
So as well as to someone coming on to export support service, let's say for that, guidance on, if we take some of the output of the research, one of the top asks was, in the research was research on market research to help businesses to export. So if a business came into the ESS and said, actually, I've got a customer in France, but I'd like to get more customers in France for my particular product, is there a part of your service would it be able to perhaps support that business in getting that research done for it, as an example?
So, for example, our service would then refer to other DIT services, both in the UK and overseas.
Right.
And through another way. So one thing I would say is the ESS can consider it to be like the front door, so to speak. So we have access to all the other DIT services, both in the UK and at post. So if we need to refer somebody, we will absolutely do so. The point is about the customer and the customer experience.
Absolutely, and obviously the end game here is to grow our exports, because recent trade stats show that we've taken a bit of a hit in terms of the export volumes. David, can I come to you? I've got a question here about, how will your research, what is it you do with the research? How do you utilize it to good effect, if you like, for our members and businesses across the UK?
Yeah, thanks, Liam, and thanks, Don, for asking the question. I guess there's two purposes to our research fundamentally, especially when it relates to trade research. What we're trying to do is shape or improve government policy. So we're trying to act as a critical friend to government and say, look, this is what businesses on the ground are telling us, this is what needs to change. So, for example, I would say we were successful in campaigning for postponed accounting for import VAT, as well as other easements relating to staged customs controls. We've also seen again another postponement to the introduction of the end of CE marking and the introduction of the UK CA. So what we're trying to do there is provide the evidence base, the reality on the ground, to say, look, this is the situation. Many businesses are not going to be able to adapt at this point in time to additional checks or additional controls. So there's a role of shaping government policy, but then there's also a more practical role of helping us to identify what chambers of commerce can do to support businesses, what DIT can do to support businesses. And if you look at ChamberCustoms as an organisation, a lot of that came out of the need that the perception that businesses needed support on customs procedures. So we try and look at the practical solutions as well as the policy solutions.
Absolutely, and that feeding into government, it's much more powerful with an evidence base, and actually, it's worth saying that the the number of people who participate in our research is statistically very significant, and so that carries a lot of power and weight. Just a quick question here for you, Chaz. What's the relationship between the ESS and the UK Embassy's trade commissioners? How are you working with the missions overseas? And that's from Attila Suadje.
So absolutely, we're all very interestedly linked and working together, and we are. So, for example, for Europe, which is obviously where we've currently rolled out the export support service, particularly at the moment. But that's not saying that we're not answering questions for the rest of the world at the moment. So we don't say no to any question, but particularly in terms of the support that's available. The Europe Market Access Centre is run out of Europe, so we're working very closely with the European Her Majesty's Trade Commissioner to Europe. And his team. So and for example, if there's a question that comes out specifically to do with a member state, it actually goes to the HMTC Europe for an answer to come back. So we're absolutely.
And a related question to that, Chaz, is from. Let me just double check from Ed Reisman, who asks: is the ESS contact centre available to EU exporters into the UK? For who are seeking assistance, or is this is a service, I think, for UK exporters exporting to other countries? I think I'm right in saying, is that correct?
Right.
It is. So this is about growing our exports and growing our economy rather than buying goods into the UK. So just to make that clear. Martin, can I come to you? Joanne at Luff, I think she wants to call on your experience perhaps in the Middle East market, and this is in relation to AEO. So she's asking, she's saying they mainly export to the Middle East. Does AEO assist you in getting your goods into the Middle East or into those markets quicker? Have you noticed any difference?
I would say probably less so outside of the EU, but I think the benefit that we'll gain is that having that internal expertise in-house is that when the customers ask for assistance, we are able to help them rather than it just being their problem. So we are seen as more of an operating partnership, helping them with their imports as well as, providing them with the goods.
So there's a lot of learning in being a proofer AEO, and that gets embedded into the team. But also, I think it would be remiss of me not to say to Joanne that actually, whilst you may not see material difference at this point in time by having AEO right now, mutual recognition agreements tend to be embedded within trade agreements, and we are at the start of a consultation on a trade agreement with the Gulf cooperation countries, and I would expect a mutual recognition of our authorised economic operator status would come in time. So it may not be an immediate thing. There are many other benefits to AEO, including a significant reduction in duty deferment account holding that can also be helpful. Just turning to some other questions then. Sylvia Novak's asking if we offer customs-specific expertise, like as an example, how to deal with returnable packaging and declarations by conduct, etc. Yes, we do at Chamber Customs. I'm not sure that the Export Support Service would do that, because that's really about the importing of items and customs declarations by conduct for packaging and so on. But yeah, get in touch with Chamber Customs, a short inquiry form on our website, and someone will get in touch with you, Sylvia, and on that matter. And then turning finally to Andrew Finch. Andrew is Export Partnerships Manager at the Hull and East Yorkshire LEP, Chaz. And what he's talking about is the LEPs and growth hubs get a mention in the export strategy, the recently launched export strategy. But he's asking, will the policy hub look to share data and intelligence with chambers, with LEPs, with growth hubs, since joint effort is going to be key to the success of this, Chaz? Do you agree with that? And how do you intend to work with other organisations already very active in this space?
So the policy hub, I'm not mute, am I? No, I'm not. So the policy, we have a stakeholder engagement team within the policy hub who will be engaging with, for example, colleagues like yourselves in chambers and and other business representative organizations. I think the key word is partnership. So the key thing that I would say is that we would definitely want to engage. We want to see how can we improve what we are delivering to businesses and helping businesses to export. So I think the intelligence is a two-way thing. I think that's something that I think we should actively look to continue and encourage in terms of the conversation. And particularly, I'm very keen to, this is only day one, so I'm very keen to ensure that we improve the service, and that needs engagement with people on the ground. So I would be very keen to engage to see how we can improve the service. What is business saying? But equally, through these task and finish groups that we are looking to undertake on specific policy issues, is how can we help and resolve some of the challenges that businesses are facing, and that the only way we can do that is also to know what's happening on the ground. So a lot of the task and finish groups will be generated from the type of queries, but from engaging with colleagues like yourselves on the ground to see actually this is, for example, I found this session to be really helpful, and we've been able to, unpack some of those things would be very useful. Thanks.
Well, Chaz, we're going to absolutely want to engage with you as you move forward. Indeed, David and our research team, will get many more insights into what's happening with business. Time is against us, as it always is. We always get really fabulous questions coming through in these webinars. The recording will be available in around a week's time or so. It remains for me to say thank you very much to my colleague David, to Martin and to Chaz for your help and support. It would be remiss of me not to mention that Thursday is a big day for Martin and his company, because they're finalists in the BCC International Trade Awards, and on Thursday evening those awards take place. So the best of luck to you, Martin, to you and your colleagues, a massively successful international trading business, as we have many of those across the UK, and we continue to seek to support them. Please come back to us, please, at ChamberCustoms for any of those specific customs queries, issues around rules of origin we can help with across our chamber network, and we have some changes coming up on that at the end of December, and so any business that is concerned about their claims of preference in the last 12 months and evidencing that to HMRC, please come and talk to us. We've got experts that can help you on that. In the meantime, thank you very much. Thank you to our audience for coming along, and I hope that we've been able to answer some of the unanswered questions. Good day to you all. Thank you.